Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're tackling a moment that is absolutely critical in any special education journey, the IEP meeting. Our goal today is to literally build you a complete playbook. We're going to use all the lessons we have today so that you can walk into that room feeling completely confident and ready to advocate for your child. I mean, have you ever felt totally outnumbered at your child's IEP meeting? Yeah, it's incredibly common. You walk in, sit down across from a table of 5 or 6 professionals, and suddenly the whole thing feels so fast, super formal, and honestly, entirely one-sided. It is perfectly natural to feel anxious when you aren't 100% sure what everyone's job is or even what you're actually allowed to say. But we're going to reframe that right now. Take a look at this quote from our sources. You are not a guest at this meeting. You are a required member. That right there is the core mindset shift we're focusing on. You are not just sitting in to observe. You have equal standing in that room. To help you really own that role, here's our agenda. We'll start with being more than a guest. Then we'll look at the required IEP roster, what each member actually does, your unique role as a parent, and finally, we'll map out your step-by-step meeting game plan. All right, let's get into section 1, more than a guest. This is where the big decisions about your child get made. The bottom line here is that understanding exactly who is sitting around that table and what they are actually responsible for completely changes the dynamic of the meeting. When you replace that feeling of confusion with real knowledge, you empower yourself and you instantly level the playing field. Moving on to section 2, the required IEP roster. Let's talk about who is legally required to be there. So the law, specifically IDEA, lays out exactly who must be at the table. These are not optional RSVPs. The required members include you, the parents. It includes at least one general education teacher if your child is or might be in a general ed setting. You also need a special education teacher for that disability-specific expertise. Then there's the LEA representative and someone who can actually interpret evaluation results. Then you've got conditional members. So as students get older, specifically when it comes to transition planning, they really should be there. Related service providers, like a speech-language pathologist or an occupational therapist, show up when their specific services are on the docket. And here's a big one. You can always bring a support person. That could be a friend, a family member, or an advocate. You don't need permission to bring them. Just give the school a quick heads up as a professional courtesy. Now, listen to this, because it's a huge rule regarding excusals. Excusing a required member requires your written agreement, and it requires their written input before the meeting even starts. So unless those very specific conditions are met, those required folks, they are not optional. They absolutely need to be there. Never let a school just breeze past it and say someone couldn't make it without following that process. Okay, section 3, what each member does. It's great to know who they are, but what are they actually supposed to contribute? Think of it like this. Every professional in that room holds a very specific piece of the puzzle. The case manager coordinates the whole shebang. They're usually your main point of contact. The school psychologist interprets the evaluations so they actually make practical sense. They shouldn't just be rattling off numbers. The general ed teacher talks about curriculum access and how your child does alongside peers without disabilities. And the special ed teacher? They focus on the specialized instruction and the strategies that are going to get results. But I really want to zero in on this one piece of bureaucratic jargon, the LEA representative. This person is an administrator who has the actual authority to commit district resources. We're talking staff, services, programming. If you're in the meeting asking for a service and this person says, well, I have to check on that, that is a massive red flag. If they can't make decisions that the district will stand behind right then and there, they are not a valid LEA representative. All right, on to section 4, your role as parent. Let's talk about the most essential member of the team. To really understand why your role is the most critical one, you have to look at these two contrasting perspectives. The school only sees your child for a specific portion of the day in a very structured, controlled setting. But you see the entire picture. You see the homework struggles at the kitchen table, the anxiety levels, the real behavior at home, and the massive amount of support it actually takes just to get through a regular Tuesday. Your view is completely unique. It is vital. And honestly, it's information that they just can't get from a standardized test. Because of that unique lens you have, your job is to share that information, ask clarifying questions, raise your concerns, and ultimately agree or disagree and consent to the IEP. And hey, remember this. Being a strong advocate does not mean you have to be aggressive. The most effective parents are just calm, specific, and laser-focused on what their child needs. Asking, hey, how exactly are we measuring this reading goal and what baseline data are we using? That's not confrontational. It's just a fantastic, necessary question. Which brings us to Section 5, the IEP Meeting Game Plan. Preparation is everything here. Let's talk about your pregame routine. First, you absolutely need to read the draft IEP and the evaluations ahead of time. You are entitled to receive these before the meeting, but not all districts will send them automatically, so you have to ask. Second, write your questions down. Do not rely on your memory when you're sitting in a stressful room. Bring a physical list. And third, know last year's goals inside and out. Map them against what you're seeing at home so you can have a real, confident conversation about progress. Now, when you're actually sitting in the meeting, use these strategies. Ask for clarification if something sounds like jargon. Ask about that baseline data. And most importantly, I am giving you full permission right now to hit the pause button if you feel rushed. You can literally just hold up a hand and say, hold on, I want to make sure I fully understand this section before we move forward. And hey, your job isn't quite over when you walk out the door. When you get the final legal IEP document, review it against the notes you took. If anything in writing looks different from what you all agreed on in that room, contact the case manager in writing right away. And, of course, keep a copy, digital or physical, of every single IEP you ever get. I want to leave you with this absolute trump card. You do not have to sign at the meeting. Period. Do not let anyone pressure you. You have every right to take that IEP home, sit with it on your own couch, and review it before putting your name on it. If you want services to start, but you have a problem with a specific part, you can literally write, I consent to this IEP, but I object to this specific section, right there on the signature page. You always have options. So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. Now that you know the team's playbook, how are you going to lead your next IEP meeting? I really challenge you to use all the lessons we've covered today. Take a deep breath, finalize your game plan, and walk into that room empowered and ready to advocate. You absolutely got this.